There is a segment, not too large, but perhaps 10 or 15% of the Republican Party who are who have serious doubts about Donald Trump. And I think seeing him in this setting, especially if he's convicted in this case, may be enough to tip what is otherwise going to be a very close election in any event.
Now, Donald Trump is back in court in Manhattan, where he's on trial over hush money payments to the porn star Stormy Daniels. Trump faces 34 felony charges related to the $130,000 payment that Michael Cohen, his former lawyer and fixer, made to Stormy Daniels to stop her claims of a sexual encounter with Trump from becoming public on the eve of the 2016 presidential race. Well, the judge has found that Donald Trump violated a gagging order for a 10th time and warned that the series of £1,000 fines for each of those occasions may not be enough. He's threatened to put Trump in jail. But on his way into court, Trump said the order that bans him from speaking about witnesses, jurors or court staff is unconstitutional.
Are you going to testify? I have a gag order as to that first question. As you know, they've taken away my constitutional rights, so I'm not allowed to answer that question. This has never happened in this country before. It's a ridiculous thing. It's a ridiculous case. I did nothing wrong, absolutely nothing wrong. Take a look at Greg Jarrett this morning. He went on. Take a look at Andrew McCarthy or Jonathan Turley or Mark Levin. It's like they say there's no case here. And yet the judge has gagged me, and I'm not allowed to talk about, I guess, his total conflict.
Well, Philip Lacovara is a former Deputy Solicitor General for the United States. He was also counsel to the Watergate Special Prosecutor. Good evening to you, Philip.
Good evening, Carol. How are you?
Very well. Really pleased to have you with us. Let me ask you, first of all, about that question of the gagging order. I mean, Donald Trump there objecting to this, and even as he did so, seemed to be breaching the gagging order anyway, in talking once again about the judge.
Well, this is classic Trump. In the clip that you played, he was saying this never happens before. This is the first time in American history. It's clearly unconstitutional. That's simply not true. Gag orders are relatively rare except in high-profile cases where the purpose is to protect the jury and the witnesses from being influenced, and to assure that both the people, that is the state, and the defendant will get a fair trial. And Trump has actually challenged on appeal some aspects of the gag orders that were originally entered, and the appellate courts cut them back a little bit, but concluded that they are generally consistent with the American constitutional principles in this case.
And the point is that these gagging orders are supposed to prevent Donald Trump speaking outside the court about, as you say, the jurors and about the judge. And Donald Trump's whole point is that the entire proceedings shouldn't be happening anyway. And he just seems determined to continue to flout these bans. Do you think he could really be jailed for doing so?
Well, there are 2 points. One is the gag order does not prevent him from complaining about the judge. And he's certainly taking advantage of the flexibility that's allowed to him to complain about the judge, whom he always describes as terribly conflicted and all that sort of thing. The gag order just prohibits him from saying some things about the jurors and the witnesses. But then you get to the real question whether the judge can back up the threat that he has reiterated today in his frustration about the possibility of sending Trump into jail, which is the ultimate sanction for a recalcitrant person like Donald Trump. And it is, I would say, a remote possibility, but a real possibility. There are facilities where Trump could be confined, at least briefly, to make the point. There is a holding cell in the courthouse where the Secret Service could provide protection, and it would give Trump a come to Jesus moment, as they say. Being inside a jail cell might impress on him the seriousness of the prosecutions that he's facing, not only the New York case, but the ones that are pending in Georgia and Washington and South Florida.
Um,
Uh,
we
Go
should
ahead.
say that Trump has pleaded not guilty to 34 counts of falsifying business records to conceal the payments to Stormy Daniels, and he's denied any sexual encounter with her. But tell us a little bit more about what we've been hearing in terms of the evidence of those payments having been made.
Well, it's pretty clear that, and even the defense isn't denying that payments were made to Stormy Daniels through her lawyer, and the prosecution has produced a lot of documentary evidence, including checks and Trump organization records, including invoices showing the payment. The real issue that the defense is standing on is whether Donald Trump uh, knew how these payments were going to be characterized and knew that the payments were going to be mislabeled as for services of counsel. That's the infamous Michael Cohen as Donald Trump's lawyer, rather than as payments designed to conceal the existence of this non-disclosure agreement that Stormy Daniels was paid $130,000 to enter into. So it's linking the issue is how do you link Donald Trump to the falsification of the records, not so much the authorization for the payments themselves.
The prosecutors or the lawyers for the prosecution are saying that they need another 2 or 3 weeks to continue to outline their evidence that they've got against him. And I mean, this has clearly just added to the frustration of the former president because this is keeping him off the campaign trail at an absolutely crucial time in the election race. Of course, the polls are not until November, but Joe Biden is out and about campaigning for votes, raising campaign funds. And we're just seeing Donald Trump in court day after day. I just wonder how much you think this could be affecting his campaign.
Well, I think it's a mixed blessing for him because he gets to use the pendency of these proceedings as a major political argument. He's complaining that, surprisingly, that he is the victim, that he's an outsider who's standing up for the little guy, and this prosecution really is an example of what he called yesterday the Joe Biden Gestapo government that's out to get him because he's sticking up for the little man. Now, anybody with an ounce of common sense or any awareness of the reality of life knows that that's balderdash. But Trump is getting political mileage out of it. And I was watching one of the pro-Trump cable network shows today to see how they were viewing this. And their view was that if Trump actually got sent to jail, even for a short stretch for contempt, as Judge Marchand was threatening, this would be 5 points more on Trump's polling and would generate another $50 million in contributions from his faithful. And it just illustrates how bizarre a world we're living in with the Donald Trump prosecution and presidential candidacy.
And just finally and briefly, despite that claim, I mean, isn't it likely that these proceedings, seeing Trump effectively humbled in court, could at least, could perhaps put off some of those swing voters, some of those undecided voters?
I think that's a real risk for Trump. And it even may affect not just so-called independents, but there is a segment, not too large, but perhaps 10 or 15% of the Republican Party who have serious doubts about Donald Trump. And I think seeing him in this setting, especially if he's convicted in this case, may be enough to tip what is otherwise going to be a very close election in any event.
Philip Lacovara, former US Deputy Solicitor General. Really good to speak to you tonight. Thank you so much.